Feeling a tug in your gut to pursue your passion? Listen in to hear an expert's advice on how and when to begin your calling into an entrepreneurial career. Have you ever felt deep within that there's something more you're supposed to be doing, but you're not sure what? Have you ever felt like you're producing a lot, but not expressing at all? Welcome to She Made It. I'm your host, Elle Zimmerman, and I am on a mission to help you cultivate meaning through the path of creativity. Join me to eavesdrop on conversations with brave women who broke through their resistances into a life of authenticity. Because I believe if she made it, you can too. Well, hello, Clara.
Hello, Elle.
So I'm going to be really full, truthful, honest disclosure here. I am recording this in November because when this episode is being released, I'm going to be on a family vacation on the island of Anguilla in the Caribbean. So all of you listeners are hearing this while I am taking my Christmas vacation, my break in paradise.
Yeah, so you can all be really happy for Elle.
Yeah, I just thought about that this will become live the week that I'm gone.
Yeah, so, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so thank you for supporting me, Clara, so that I can do this, and thank you to our guest Jen for recording early. And I'm so excited about our next guest because I met her through a business mentoring program that I'm a part of, and she has dedicated herself to mentoring, teaching, supporting what she calls non-9-to-5ers.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, those who absolutely know that they're meant to be on their own. They're meant to be in their own business, generate money their way, on their terms, with their strengths. It's really cool, and she sort of took that path herself, and she's going to share that with us today.
Super exciting. I can't wait to hear this interview.
Today's guest is Jen Shultz, founder of the Non-9-to-5. She is an expert at helping emerging entrepreneurs leave their desk job and step into a calling toward entrepreneurship. I'm so excited to have her as our guest today. And Jen, where are you during our interview today? Where are you calling in from?
Yeah, I am in Austin, Texas. This is where I've been living for the past 4 years.
Awesome. So we are in Cincinnati, and it's like making its transition into the colder weather. What is the weather like where you are? Is it still warm?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because we had this massive cold front that came in the other week. But right now, it's about 65, 70 degrees. So it's not too bad.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I know in reading a little bit about you and in talking with you, you actually, when you moved to Austin, it was from Manhattan, from New York.
Yeah. So when I made the move from New York to Austin, I was actually at that time I was living in Queens, but yes, I was in New York, and I had lived in Manhattan before then and Staten Island before then.
Yeah, so I have to ask you, so Clara, my co-host, we were doing a little research and I was sharing with her. And for our listeners, Jen and I work with the same mentor. We're in the same business coaching program, Business Miracles with Heather Dominic. And so I learned about Jen's work through retreats and in-person gatherings of these incredible, I guess, just entrepreneurs in all different industries, but sort of all connected because of the, I don't know if it's I don't know how to explain it. It's maybe we've all identified as highly sensitive, and not just highly sensitive based on the work of Elaine Aron, but also highly sensitive entrepreneurs, which adds a whole nother dimension to being an entrepreneur. So I've connected with you and learned about you. But one of the things that really drew my attention is that you are from Staten Island. And I was telling Clara this, and Clara and I kind of looked at each other. We're like, how do you live in Staten Island? Like, what's there? Like, we think of the Statue of Liberty, right? That's where the Statue of Liberty is, right?
Well, it's not in Staten Island.
It's on its own little island.
There's a ferry that you can take from Staten Island to Manhattan where you can see the Statue of Liberty, and a lot of people will do that.
I would just love to hear, because what you do, I think, is directly tied into your own story and your own journey. And like you have gained knowledge and wisdom because of the path that your life has taken, that now you empower women to do almost what you did. And you bring the skills and the gifts, and I know intuition is a big part of your work, your own, but also helping others tap into theirs. What if you could kind of we don't have time for every single part of the story, although I know that it's, there's a lot of depth into your experience and what got you where you are. But if just to give us sort of the overview of how you ended up in Austin, now being an entrepreneur.
So I was a first grade teacher at a really top performing charter school. At that time, I was teaching in the South Bronx. I had worked in Harlem, same charter school in Harlem before that, went to the South Bronx. And it was towards the end of 2010, I found myself in a massive depression and massively anxiety ridden. I was going through a real space of feeling like I was a big loser, that I sucked, I didn't have any confidence, I didn't feel good enough. And this was what was going through my mind every single day from morning till evening. And I quit my job at the end of that year, and I didn't have a job to go to after I left. And that sort of propelled me into going, well, I can teach, and I know I'm not meant for a 9-to-5. I know I'm not meant to going back to another school. What could I do here? And my dad had actually said to me, why don't you start your own tutoring business? So that's kind of essentially what I did. And I started that in New York. And then I worked one-on-one with students with disabilities. I homeschooled an autistic child for about 3 years. I worked with kids that they're learning disabilities, all sorts of disabilities that ran the gamut. And then that morphed into what I'm doing now, saying to myself, hey, I was able to leave my job without having a job lined up while I was living in Manhattan, paying, Manhattan rent prices. If I can do this, there are other people that I know need to hear that they can as well. And I want to guide them and support them and teach them how to do it. And so that's brought me to the non-9-to-5. And now actually, as I'm saying this, I'm getting lost in what your original question was.
No, it's perfect. No, exactly. I was sort of just trying to understand, how did you end up in Austin doing the coaching you do? But I do want to go back to something, because you sort of said it as if it was almost no big deal, but you talked about being depressed and anxious, which unfortunately a lot of people struggle with those dark emotions. But what you did was something dramatic. You quit. You made a decision and you quit without a job. And so how did you know that was the decision with all that emotion you were dealing with? And then how did you have the guts to make that decision?
I appreciate that question, Elle, because it's I don't have I wish I had this really cool answer. I woke up in the middle of the night and my intuition was like, you're going to quit your job and everything's going to be great. And it was nothing like that at all. I found myself in just a really miserable place as I was going through this depression, this anxiety. And excuse me, I was just so in so much turmoil within myself. The Saturday night before I went in on the Monday when I quit, I went out and ended up getting really drunk, just really wasted drunk, to be honest with you, and got really sick. And the next day I woke up, even more depressed, kind of just feeling like my life was just a mess and I don't know what I was doing. And I remember talking to my dad and crying to him on the phone. Now, he didn't know that I had been like wasted the night before, but saying like how miserable I was and everything. And he didn't know he just said to me, he said, why don't you just quit your job? If you're so upset, just quit. And honestly, where I was at that place is I was waiting or wishing, wanting for someone to give me permission.
Yeah.
I didn't actually give myself permission to quit. I wanted someone to tell me it's okay. And then that Monday is when I gave those 2 weeks, but I didn't know what was going to happen next. So I don't know if I really had guts, to be honest with you. I think I did it from a really, really low place. However, there was a teeny tiny feeling inside of me that knew like, this is right, but super tiny.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, being really honest about that and the power that our parents have, right? We so want to make them proud and have their permission and approval. And I know it's Elizabeth Gilbert, who I love her book, Big Magic. And she talks about how we have this principle in our head, this authority figure that we need to be able to become our own principal, give ourselves that permission. And she does this really cool exercise where she talks about write a letter to the principal and ask for what you need. And so it was but how awesome that you had the supportive father to step in and see ultimately what was best for you and grant you that permission and give you that push even. One of the things that I love about your work, that just, again, from the little that I know about it, is that it is rooted in intuition. And so because of the way you quit the job, and you sort of shared with me that it maybe wasn't your own intuition, it was the outside permission, but ultimately, in order to thrive as an entrepreneur, the intuition was the skill, the gift, the strength that you honed. How did you do that? And how do you now use your intuition?
Just to clarify, do you mean how did I hone my own intuition?
Yeah, like I sort of think of the moment to quit wasn't this big prompting from the universe or your gut telling you, even though you knew you were miserable. You really needed somebody to tell you it's okay.
Yes.
Which confirmed what your body and your gut and your emotions were telling you, but you hadn't quite honed your own ability to tap into your intuition or allow your intuition to guide you. So now that's the core of your work. So you obviously had to develop that. So how did that development take place, and how do you use your intuition now to guide you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really interesting, like actually hearing you sort of recreate what I shared and hear that from you, because I was getting these intuitive hits that were like, you got to leave this job. Like, this isn't for you. But I wasn't confident enough to do it on my own. I needed someone to give me that permission. Mm-hmm. What's interesting though, is that when I left there and I started creating my one-on-one work with students, which my business was called Teacher on the Go, I started, without realizing it, tapping into my intuition. And I started doing things that just felt like they were the next step. So I was spending a lot of time in a Starbucks coffee shop, going through contacts I had of teachers, of parents, of anyone related in education. And I started emailing and calling them, and letting them know that I was providing services for students. And just kind of it's kind of hard for me to put in words, but just kind of, and again, it was without realizing it, following my intuition without realizing it. And then it came at some point where when I stepped into the work that I do now, that felt really intuitive. And as I started working with clients, doing the work I do in the non 9 to 5, I started really becoming more interested in this whole intuitive thing and what it looked like for me and what it looked like for other people. And honestly, bringing intuition in my work has only been over the past 2 or 3 years. And I've been doing this for a little bit over 6 years. And going deeper into it, I think also stems from our shared mentor, Heather, who talks a lot about intuition. And I realized just how interested I was and how I wanted to really build a business, build a life where I'm feeling into things, and how important that is for us as human beings. Because if I am using my intuition, I am being authentic and I am really going, well, what's the best thing for me? What makes the most sense for me? Mm-hmm. And in turn, I've taken that and created the 4 C's method of intuition, which I teach people. I don't know if I answered your question there, but
No, that's, I think just for me, the way I sort of interpret that is, it's like sometimes we do things naturally, like they are skills and gifts that we have, but we don't think of them as unique or different because they're so natural for us. But then we start to realize, oh wow, this is leading me, or this is different from people I'm talking to. And then we stop and sort of try to break it down and understand it in a way so that we can then teach it. So I think that would be more the way I would describe you. You knew, your dad gave you the permission to take the action. You went into what you know, which was the teacher teaching, and you did it. You basically grew that very intuitively, organically, and then realized, oh, wow, this is kind of different. This is kind of working. And now I can help other people do a business this way. Would you say that sounds accurate?
you said it better than I could have.
Oh, no, you said it great. I do have a question, though, because one thing I read in your bio online, and then I think you have shared as well, is that you also didn't just realize you didn't like the job. You realized you are not made to have a boss. So it was a realization that you really are wired and built to be an entrepreneur, which is very different, especially if you're not from an entrepreneurial family. So stepping into what is more kind of like the better alignment of who you are, which is so interesting because for you it was manifesting in depression and anxiety. And for some people it shows up as burnout or bitterness or but that you learned way more than just it wasn't the right job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing that up because this had been a theme for me for a really long time. I've had so many jobs in the past. I worked before I taught, I worked in music and entertainment. And again, it's like when I look back in retrospect, there was this sort of through line of me working for someone else and that intuitive part that I didn't really realize going, that doesn't really make sense. Like, why am I being told to do it this way? And there'd be a lot of reasons where I'd go, well, that doesn't seem honest, or that doesn't seem authentic, or doing it that way doesn't really seem to have integrity, or I feel like there's more of an efficient way to do it. And what I realized was I had all these ideas and I had all these thoughts and visions of ways that I wanted to do things, but I couldn't, or I was too afraid to speak up. I was too afraid to have my voice heard in those various jobs. That I could say 100% is true for me. Mm-hmm. I was afraid. And so I would just kind of go along with things in a sense. And, I'll never forget, this is kind of funny. This always sticks out in my mind. When I was teaching, and this was in early 2010, I believe, or maybe end of 2009. And when I first started teaching in the charter school system, they brought me on as a teacher's assistant because they needed you to do a year of that. Then you could be an actual lead classroom teacher. And I was sort of subbing for one of the teachers at the charter school. She had to do something and I was in her classroom. And I needed to get the first grade students to clean up the room. And I have a very silly, kind of funny side to me. And I thought, I'm going to stand on this chair and I'm going to talk in a weird voice. And I'm going to point to places in the room where I see pieces of paper and things. And I started doing it and they were loving it. And I just had this silly voice. And I was like, oh, I see that piece of paper over there. We've got to get it. We've got it. And they were cleaning up. It was so beautiful to see them really responding to what I was giving them. And someone had passed by the classroom and saw me standing on the chair. And later on, I was reprimanded for standing on the chair. Now, for someone else, they'd go, no big deal. All right, whatever, I won't stand on the chair. But for me, it was so deep that someone was telling me, like, this is wrong and you can never do this again. And me kind of going, but you see what I was able to accomplish? I was able to get this classroom and these are not my students. And if you're a teacher, you know, like as a teacher, you know that your students respond to you. If you bring a sub in, it's going to be a whole other ball game. And that they were able to respond to me. I took it very personally. I will definitely admit that. But that was like a realization of like, no, I'm going to do it my way because I know how others are going to respond. And I'm going to do it in a way that works for them, that works for me. And so when someone tells me, no, that's wrong, or you can't do it that way, it drives me insane.
Yeah, no. And I love that example because it's about the rules, not the results. You know what I mean? It was focusing on, we don't really care what you accomplished. You didn't do it the right way. And so that's what entrepreneurialism is all about. It's about how do we get to the results doing it the way that works best for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when someone tells me it's the wrong way, I could just feel my New Yorker come out. I want to start saying some very colorful words.
That is awesome. So you're funny and you have a little, I guess, crude side.
What was the word you used?
I don't know.
Did you say crude?
What would you describe that New York attitude? How would you describe that?
There's a little bit, I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of attitude there. Like, don't tell me what to do. Like, I got this, you know, I figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so sweet and you don't have that vibe at all. So
it's underneath. It's definitely underneath.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to share really quickly. So I had one job. Of course, I had jobs when I was in high school, you know, working at the pizza place or whatever. But I had one job, and it was this great job with a production company, also in the entertainment industry. And it was a coveted position to have the production assistant job. And I lasted in that job for 2 weeks. I was like, I could not stand the constraints of showing up at a certain time, having to stay till a certain time, doing tasks that somebody else told me how and when to do them. And of course, I was at a very entry-level position, but that was it. I literally gave up that job within 2 weeks, and I never worked for anybody else after that. I'm just not wired to work anything other than as an entrepreneur. Yeah.
I wish that I had realized that earlier on. And I wish that I had realized that and then knew that it was okay.
And see, I'll just say something that the reason why that was easy for me, and we can go back to the whole parent thing. My parents, I was raised in an entrepreneurial family. So my father had, you know, my family is in the golf business. So my grandfather had bought a golf course. My dad took over the golf course. So I experienced as the norm running a business, managing employees. And so then going to have to work for somebody, that felt very foreign to me. So it was an easy choice.
Yeah. You know, so that's really cool. But you know, what's interesting is that my dad is technically an entrepreneur. And he actually just recently sold the business, but he was part of a franchise.
And that's very much entrepreneur. Yeah.
Yeah. An auto body shop, a national auto body shop. And he owned one. He started it in the 80s. Him and my mom, when I was really little, me and my brother were like babies, and was very successful. So I never had a dad who had a boss. And when I met friends of mine whose dads had bosses, I thought it was really weird. However, I wasn't really ever taught to be an entrepreneur. And I just never thought that, I don't know, it's just a weird thing. I was never really thought that like, that's where I would go. Mm-hmm. But when I do look back at things that I did, like projects I worked on, things I did in my life, they were very entrepreneurial without me even realizing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell me now how do you serve your clients? How do you help people, and who would go to you for what you do? Because I hear all the time people talking about being in their job, wanting to get out, wanting something different, feeling burnt out, but feeling stuck. So who is I guess, yeah, just tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, well, maybe I'll share with you like the ideal person I work with. Is that helpful to start there?
Sure.
Okay. So mostly women. I have worked with men before, and I can work with men. Absolutely. But women who, they're in one of a couple of different places. They're in a 9-to-5 job, but they have that intuitive heart, gut knowing that they are not meant for that they are meant to be an entrepreneur. And they have a knowing that they're meant to serve and support other people, that they want to really make a difference in other people's lives in a way that feels really good for them. Or they might have an idea for a business. They may have recently started the business, but they're new. They're new on the scene. And the way that I teach what I teach is really twofold. So I do a lot of really deeper inner work with the people I work with. We go really deep into fears and limiting beliefs that have been with them since they were kids. Because when we're carrying all that stuff with us into adulthood, a lot of it's not really helpful. And we're also laying down practical steps to take, just really easy step-by-step places. My step-by-step, when I say step-by-step places, we're just going step-by-step, taking practical steps. And I would say it's also very holistic. I take the entire person in. So for my clients, while they're coming to me, and some of them have never started a business before, we're laying down those steps to start the business. We're doing the deeper inner work. That way they can start to move through those places that they're just really afraid of. People come to me and they use that word stuck. They use the word stagnant. They're afraid that in the next year, they're just going to be in the same place, in the same job, or their business isn't moving forward. They use words like, I feel disheartened. I feel frustrated. I feel paralyzed by fear. And so what's interesting is that they're so similar to me, which is, no accident, because I get people like that. There are people who will start businesses who, they've got some fears, but they don't feel paralyzed. They're going to really start making moves and doing things. And I was never like that. I really needed help and someone to hold my hand. So in turn, I'm doing that with them. Should I keep going from there?
Yeah. So then I guess one of the things that I would love to see if you can answer, because I know it's super individualized and every person's different, but so many people have that question of, I guess the two questions that I hear often are, how do I make the move? How do I leave that 9-to-5 into entrepreneurship, but how do I do it without abandoning one thing and stepping into something that there's no foundation laid yet? Do you help them transition?
Yeah. So, in answering that question, there is no hard and fast rule of the how. It just doesn't exist.
Let me ask this question. How does a person know to leave their job? Like, let's say they come to you and they're disheartened and they know it's not the right thing. How do they know it's entrepreneurship? How do they know it shouldn't happen right away? How do they, do you guide them in that process? Or do they usually come to you beyond that?
No, it's both. I mean, both of those scenarios. So if someone's so I can give an example of a client of mine who, when we started working together, she was in her 9 to 5 and she had sort of started her business on the side. But she wasn't getting paid to do what she was doing. So she's a baker. She makes these amazing chocolate chip cookies, and that's her product. She was doing it for friends and family and colleagues because she really enjoyed doing it. But she saw that there was something bigger there for herself, and she knew that there was something there. And she also knew that she did not want to be in her job for the rest of her life. So when we started, we didn't start going, okay, you're just going to leave your job. We started going, okay, we're going to start building the business baby step by baby step, baby step by baby step. And then we were talking about her leaving her job, and I would ask her questions about it. And we came to a place where maybe designed isn't the right word, but we came together to a place of when she wanted to leave her job, what she was going to do financially in terms of how much money she was generating from the business. And then we started crafting a plan together and really just going again, step by step, step by step, step by step, just looking at every little piece. And, maybe we had to change the plan a little bit and tweak it here. And eventually she left her full-time job. It was earlier, I think it was at the very beginning of this year. She left her full-time job and now she's full-time in her business.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It's important to share that we've been working together for 2.5 years. So this took some time to really put it into place.
So let me ask a question before. First of all, congratulations. That's super cool. Like, you are just leading them on the path to their dream.
Yeah.
Really cool. But how does a person know that the discomfort they're feeling is about, how do they know it's entrepreneurship, or what if the discomfort is something else? Like, how do you help them, or how does a person know I'm miserable, I'm frustrated? What do I do?
So in terms of how do I know that my misery and my frustration is coming from the fact that I want to be an entrepreneur and I'm not?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean, that it's coming from there? I think it's just a knowing. You have to, that's a great question, but maybe someone else would even have a better answer than I do, but it's really just a feeling and a knowing that, for me personally, I got to the space of and it definitely took time because I would second guess myself. Am I really meant to do this? Maybe I should just have a full-time job. Is this right? But even when I asked myself those questions, I kept coming back to, I really want this. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but I really want it. I really want it. I know I'm supposed to help other people, and I know I'm not supposed to do it for someone else in their company, that I'm supposed to do it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kept coming from, I kept moving forward, and then those questions would come up and I kept getting the same answer and the same answer and the same answer. And there were times where I'd be like, but it would be so much easier to just go back to a full-time job or do something full-time. And so that's important for a person. If they keep coming back to I just keep getting this feeling. Mm-hmm. I would say that that's really being on that path. Yeah. And I connect with all sorts of people. I'll connect with people who will say I really feel like I'm supposed to be an entrepreneur, but I really love my job. Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but I really love my job. Excuse me. And so, and I don't know, I may or may not work with a person like that because it really depends on how badly do you want this? So I connected with someone recently who I gave a speaking engagement. I met her there. We had a lovely conversation. Then we had a conversation on the phone, and what came out of the conversation, which we discovered together, was that she's not in a place where she's ready to make that leap. I asked her like this $1 million question. I said, let me ask you this. If someone came to you tomorrow and said, I want to hire you for a job that you would like, and I'm going to pay you multiple six figures to do this job, would you take the job or would you start your business? Without missing a beat, she said, I'd take the job. So I knew right there that like we wouldn't be a match to work with each other. Because I thought of myself, if someone asked me that question, I'd probably go, oh man, I'd really love, multiple six figures or $1 million. But no, I wouldn't do it because this is my path.
Yeah, because it becomes way bigger than the money. It becomes about the soul purpose, about, that prompting to what are you really called to bring to the world. And often the only way to do that is through entrepreneurship.
Yeah, yes. And I'll add, sometimes I joke and I'll say to people, I wouldn't have stepped into this work. Well, let me actually reverse the way I'm saying. If my sole focus was, I want to make $1 million like super quickly, or I want to have health benefits and this super high paying job, I wouldn't have stepped into the work that I do. That wouldn't have been the first thing on my mind. But the first thing on my mind was, I need to do this work. I need to help other people. I want to help other people. I want to show people that I was able to go from one extreme to another, and not just go from a full-time job to a sustainable, successful business, but also go from depression, anxiety, not feeling worthy, feeling like I was a loser, not having any self-esteem, to being a woman where I feel confident in myself, in my work. I know my worth, and I know that this is my path. And
yeah,
so
I love
and that's at the heart of what I'm doing as well.
Yeah, and that's what exactly. And now you're helping others do that. I love that, again, it goes back to your work with intuition, that it says your body, your heart, your soul will tell you, because it will not go away. It will keep coming up, keep gnawing at you. And then you also mentioned that how our body changes. Like when that comes up, we get excited and we might feel like some joy and lightness. So it's not just the gnawing, but it's also how's it changing your physiology. And then you go to the job and you feel heavy and dark. And so I love that answer. And then I just want to reflect on what you said about even if it feels super scary. Because sometimes those ideas, and I'll speak from my own experience, sometimes those ideas seem super frivolous and even a little bit careless. And knowing that it's for me, I have to take your advice and remember that consistent gnawing is actually the guide, and the worry of carelessness and frivolousness is really the resistance that's stopping me from pursuing that. So,
yeah, that and that the feelings in the body, that really is a really great way to tap into that to guide you. Because I know for me, when I feel inspiration and I'm creating something based off of my inspiration, that's intuitive guidance right there. If you're someone in a job and on the weekends you find yourself, I don't know, gardening and loving gardening, but not just loving gardening, but starting to think of like, hey, wouldn't it be great like that I could have a nursery and I could sell really great gardening, plants and gardening tools and things to other people. And then it becomes like, I could see myself doing this every day. And I would love to be here every day. And I wouldn't mind putting the work in. Those thoughts start to build. And there are people who go, wouldn't it be really cool if I opened a restaurant? Okay, but then because that's a big undertaking, but is it really cool, or is it like I feel this in my body, like I want to open up this restaurant. I'm meant to feed people this type of cuisine, and I want to be involved in every aspect of it.
Yeah, and then there are some people who love to garden and they garden because it's a hobby, and that's where it stops. Yeah, awesome. Oh, Jen, I just love hearing more about you. And if people do want to reach out and learn more about how you coach and transition people and listen to that prompting from within, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my website is the non925.com, all spelled out, non925.com.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the notes too. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And then also if you go to the website, there's an invitation there to receive a PDF ebook that I wrote that's called The Number One Step to Staying with Your Business Mission.
I love that. So the non 9 to 5 and a first step for those of you who are not sure what to do or where to go next. So thank you so much, Jen, for chatting with me from sunny Austin, Texas.
You're welcome. Absolutely. It's my pleasure. This was great.
Yeah, and have a great new year. And I'll see you, luckily, thankfully, I'll see you in the spring at our Business Miracles retreat.
I will see you there. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was a fascinating interview with Jen, but I've been thinking that there is a group of people like she talked about who either work in a 9 to 5 job or are full-time moms or whatever it is that's taking up most of their time, and they feel sort of unsettled or not at rest about something, like they need something more to bring them more joy or fulfillment in their life, but they don't necessarily think it's entrepreneurship. What do you recommend for those people?
Well, thank you, first of all, for that question. I can speak from my experience because I already was an entrepreneur and I was feeling like there was something that I was supposed to be doing that was missing, or I was sort of like feeling this like faint dissatisfaction with my life. And for me, it went directly back to creativity, to creating meaning in my life, to finding moments to make, and not make like produce, but to use my creator skills to bring forth new things into the world, either for my children or for my family. And one of the things that came out of that was I started the Facebook group Creative Uncovery, one, to give myself a place to honor my creativity, but also to bring a conversation together of other women who just seek meaning in the busyness, meaning in they might be in a season of raising kids or a time where they just need something more. And that was sort of what worked for me. So if anybody's interested, they could jump into our Facebook group.
Yeah, I love that you shared that, because I think sometimes entrepreneurship is totally the outlet for creativity, but sometimes it's things that, like you've said, feel more frivolous. And if any of you want to hear more about Elle's story, about how she ventured more into a creative life, that's episode 1. And if you haven't heard it, you should definitely tune in. So thanks for joining us for today's episode, everyone. We can't wait to have you back next time.
If you were inspired by what you heard today, I would love for you to share it with a friend. And also, reviews are the number one way that this podcast will be able to help more people step into their creative life purpose, and I would be honored to have yours. I'm so grateful you joined us for today's episode. I bet you're here because you know there's something more for your life. Whether you're moving into something creative or letting go in order to take that next creative step, I have something for you. My free guide to graceful transitions. You can find it at ellezimmerman.com/transitions. And remember, if she made it, you can too.